Welcome to the History of the Batman with Londyn, brought to you by Meltdown Comics and Collectibles in Hollywood, California. This is where we relive the defining moments of one of the most iconic figures in comic art and literature, the Batman. My name is Adam Silverstein, and as always, I am joined by Londyn. From the shadows, we have that mysterious voice that you may know of as Shadow Adam. History of the Batman with Londyn is produced and engineered by Mason Booker. We are live here at Meltdown Comics, where every third Tuesday of the month we have Meltthology. You basically show up 7 p.m., draw a page of whatever you want. At 9:30 p.m., the art is collected. When you come back the next month, after paying $3 for printing costs, you'll get a complete zine with everyone's contributions inside. There is no set theme, and all skill levels are welcome. Recently had their 1-year anniversary of Meltthology, so check it out. It's amazing. Go to @melt_thology on Twitter or Facebook. If you have any specific questions, ask for Chuck. But let's get into Batman here, because we were gone for a week, and some of our favorite listeners shouted us out and said, "Where were you? We missed you." Londyn, you okay? Everything good? You back? You ready?
Yeah, I'm back, and no more hiatus.
All right. So it's New Comic Book Wednesday. That means new comic book podcast, History of the Batman. Londyn, what are we going to talk? Well, first of all, before we get into what we're going to talk about, how was Kamikaze?
Kamikaze was so much fun. There was a lot going on, and I did the Batman panel, and that was fun. And
I saw that.
Yeah, you were there, and a lot of listeners and followers were there too, which I thank you guys for coming out. That was really cool. And yeah, Kamikaze was great.
Yeah. Any specific highlights? Any Batman highlights?
I talked to a few different creators and hung out in Artist Alley, and overall it was really good. And I think just for me, the highlight was doing the panel and being among other Batman people and talking about Batman and all of the different versions, and that whole experience was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You actually represented on the Batman panel. The idea was that each Batman expert was assigned a specific Batman.
Right.
And you got to basically explain to the audience why your Batman was the best based on the questions that were asked by the moderator.
Right. Yeah.
And you had the animated series Batman.
Right, which is, I think, was just an automatic crowd favorite.
Well, you won.
Yeah.
Everyone liked your Batman the best.
Yeah, but I can't take all the credit, of course. The creators of the series, they deserve the credit, and Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. It was really fun because the animated series is one of my personal favorite Batman. So it was great to actually talk about one that I enjoy so much, and that was one of the Batmans that got me into Batman and reading comics. So it was fun.
They made it easy for you.
Yeah.
you know, one of the things, I was in the audience supporting, and one of the coolest things that I remember seeing or being a part of is like you were hitting your points. Now that was your first panel.
Yes,
and
ever.
So I could see that there was a little bit of, you weren't jumping in.
No.
Like everyone else is jumping in. You were being very respectful of everyone else's time.
Yeah. And we had to share mics, so it was a little interesting, and I already had nerves, and it was because it was my first panel, but I tried to get in there as best as I could.
No, and I thought you did a great job. And the coolest thing that I was talking about earlier, just mentioning, is that every time you hit a point, you would bring up something that I didn't know about necessarily, but all the Batman hardcore fans knew about it, and you would say something such as, when he did this, and everyone would be, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or when you mentioned one of the episodes I think one of the most iconic Batman moments in the animated series. I can't. Is that right? Didn't you talk about Mr. Freeze, or you talked about some?
Yeah, I talked about Heart of Ice briefly and Two-Face
And the
and
crowd was like, "Yeah, yeah!" And they're clapping every time you're saying something.
yeah,
That was
so
pretty cool.
yeah, and people said, and afterwards, people said they came out because they loved the animated series, so they wanted to come and hear. So the audience was really great. They
It was
responded really,
packed.
yeah, which I didn't expect.
Right. I remember
So
beforehand you were like, I
I
don't
don't
know if
know if
anyone
people,
will be there. There
yes,
may be, and it was the last panel.
right. It was the last panel of the day, and so I didn't think there would be as many people, but the whole room was filled, and there was like standing room too, and I was like, wow. So that added to the nerves a little,
Right.
but overall it was fun.
It was great.
Yeah, it was
She
fun.
hung in tough. The moderator told us later that a lot of those guys were trained stand-up comics.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, they were. You could tell that they had done it before, and what it was still impressive was that you maintained your cool, composed self and actually hit big points. I mean, you might have not had the flair, right?
Right.
But you were you were also the only woman on stage, other than the
Yeah,
moderator, which
right.
was awesome.
Yeah,
So
that's
kudos to you on that.
thank you. Yeah. She was very excited about that. She was cuz she said for the Battle of panels, I was the first woman ever in those. So that's something that is cool all by itself.
Right.
So I'm glad I think I represented the anime
Oh, heck
series
yeah,
as
you did.
best as I could.
Well, you won. You won. You got the loudest applause when they
Yeah.
asked who was the favorite. So
Yeah,
if,
that was really fun. So I would like to do another panel
I'm
again.
sure you'll get the
I think my
opportunity.
nerves will be better.
Well,
I
listen,
won't be as
I mean, you listened
nervous.
to your first podcast, and now you listen to yourself now. I'm sure,
Yeah,
it's different.
it is.
It
So
takes time.
yeah. So yeah, so yeah, Kamikaze in general was great. And a lot of people said that they listened to our last episode that was like a Batman fan guide to Kamikaze, and that actually helped them.
Oh, great.
And they got to meet creators and go to different panels, and so I'm glad that was helpful.
Yes, yes, yes. And then you also had a pretty cool experience here at Meltdown on Wednesday.
It was November 4th.
Yeah, maybe it was
So that
November
was
4th.
so yeah, it was last Wednesday.
And what happened?
Yeah. Grant Morrison was here
Wait.
signing the first issue to Claws,
Yeah.
which has art by Dan Moore, and I am already enjoying it. And it's a interesting take on how Santa Claus came to be in a sense. But yeah, I got to see Grant Morrison, which he's one of my favorite writers and Batman writers. So it's very cool. Meltdown always has amazing signings to come to. So yeah, that's always it's always great to see him.
Yeah, and we're going to try for you listeners to get Grant here at the History of the Batman with London podcast.
Yes,
So we're working on that.
But
But that man is mysterious.
he is.
He's really into magic. Do you know that?
Yeah, I've heard. I don't even know. I would love to just pick his brain and discuss a lot with him. So he's a very great guy.
Well,
Very nice.
let's try to make that happen.
For sure.
All right. So what are we doing here today? What are we talking about Batman related?
Well, we actually haven't dived into this subject on the podcast before, so it's a great time to start. We're going to talk about the Batsuit today.
The Batsuit.
Yes.
And I'd also like to shout out Ranker.com.
Yes.
We have been working with Ranker, and we worked with Ranker on the Disney Click podcast that comes out of Meltdown as well. And Ranker, if you don't know, people, it is a very fun website. Have you gotten a chance to look at it?
Yes, I have. They literally have lists for everything.
Right. I mean, the top heading, people, film, TV, music, sports, games, videos, funny, more. And then you go to more and it's crazy. I mean, it goes, and then you get into the comic books, and they have lists for Game of Thrones, and what is the concept of the ranker? Can you tell the listeners?
Well, basically they do top lists for anything really, and it's funny because I went on the website and it's literally things that you wouldn't even think about listing or ranking, or it's 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 more like countdowns, which I think are fun, and they have a lot of Batman ones actually. And so today we're going to talk about their list for the best Batman costumes or suit. And their list actually has, and it's by the fans or the people of the website, and they vote. So it's pure fan vote. And they have on this list 55 different suits. And which people have asked me before, why don't you talk about the Batsuit? And there are so many different interpretations of the suit, whether it's in comics or TV or film or video games. And it's just a lot to try to condense, but that's why we're going to look at Ranker's list, and we're going to talk about the top 10.
And I think we should count down from 10 to 1.
Yes, that's what we're going to do.
All right. But I will tell listeners, if you get a chance to go to ranker.com, you really should. It is super fun. I'm looking at some of these lists right now. The sexiest female comic book characters. Do you know who number 1 is? Anyone? Who was voted number 1?
No.
Let me ask Shadow Adam. Come on.
Gwen Stacy?
No, Emma Frost.
Really?
All right, you're a superhero guy. You're a Superman guy, Shadow Adam. So
I saw they had a list on there, and it's the 13 reasons why Batman hates Superman.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
I need to read that because I want to know what they are.
Here's one. Before we get into the actual Batsuit list, this is the list that they have. It's the best comic book superheroes of all time. Their criteria was the only superhero protagonist characters from comics, no villains or superhero teams. And so they want you to list the most bad, tough, iconic comic book superheroes ever created. And so let's see if you guys can guess the top 10. Let's see top 10, all the superheroes.
You go first for number 10.
Just give me one. Give me one.
Is Spider-Man there?
Spider-Man is number 2.
Okay.
Your guy, Superman, where do you think he is?
I'm going to go with 5.
Ooh, Iron Man is 5.
Iron Man's 5. That's my second favorite.
There you go. Well, Superman is 4.
Okay.
Really?
All right. Captain America, 6. Number 10, Wonder Woman. The only woman in the top 10.
Oh, that's a shame, actually.
I know, but
11 was Rogue.
Okay.
And 12 was Daredevil.
Nice.
Number 9, Thor. 8,
Okay.
Flash.
Huh.
7, Hulk. I've told you 6, Captain America. 5, Iron Man. 4, Superman. 3.
Is that Batman?
No.
No.
Wolverine.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And number 1 is Batman. So
That's awesome.
perfect segue.
It's funny because usually when they do lists like that, just anywhere, Superman and Batman are like number 1, number 2, number 3.
Yeah.
So it depends.
I would say that if you really look at the history of superheroes, and at least since probably the 70s, maybe even earlier, but I would say you're definitely, it's Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman. Once X-Men got popular, Wolverine made his way into that. And definitely the top 4. And then Iron Man kind of came back with the movies.
Yes,
you know?
definitely. Because I don't think a lot of people, unless you read the comics, knew who Iron Man was before the film. So it's crazy how that character became so popular and one of the most popular Marvel characters or comic book characters. So,
right.
Yeah,
Londyn and I didn't know each other in 2008, so I took a group of non-really comic book friends to see Iron Man, and all their question was, who's Iron Man? And now he's a household name.
Yeah.
So clearly he is a driving force in the Marvel universe. and obviously based on fan votes, top 5 superhero of all time.
Right.
All right, so Batman costumes. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, talking about Batman, we always know that within the group or the allies he has, he doesn't have superpowers. So the Batsuit is one of the things that makes him the hero that he is. So it's just as important as the Batcave or the Batmobile. It's one of those iconic, it's part of his iconography. It's part of recognizing him. And the Batsuit has become one of the most popular, I think, superhero costumes, period. If they had to rank costumes, which they probably do on somewhere on Ranker, or the most popular or most recognizable superhero costumes, that Batsuit is definitely up there. And its design has changed a lot over the 76 years, but it still stays true to a few elements. And when Bob Kane created Batman back in 1939, his original design for Batman's costume looks different than we know it today. It had red and yellow coloring, and he had, based in being influenced by things such as Leonardo da Vinci's wings, he had bat wings, and he had a domino mask, and it looks very different than what we know. And then when the Ghost Rider Bill Finger came in and he helped redesign the suit, we see the difference from the domino mask to an actual cowl that covers most of his face to give it a more mysterious look. Instead of the bat-like wings, we get a kind of scalloped cape, and you added gloves for the detective side, and you have, instead of the red and the yellow, that was probably more influence from Superman, since Bob Kane was asked to create another popular hero like Superman had become at the time. You have a blue and gray color scheme. And so you first see the first Batsuit, you see Batman in Detective Comics 27 from 1939. And from then on, his suit evolves. But usually you have the same bodysuit, which is usually the color schemes of between the gray and blues and blacks. It still has that dark kind of demeanor. And most importantly, with all of the Batman suits, you always have a bat chest emblem, or there is the shape of a bat, because the reason why the suit looks the way it does is because Batman wants to illustrate or show that he's the shadow of the bat, that he's trying to strike fear into the hearts of criminals. And so the way that he does it is he has this bodysuit, and he usually has a cape, and he has the cowl, and he has the gloves, and he has boots and the utility belt. And those elements, when we start our top 10 list, are all there, and they all kind of change differently with each creator, but those elements make up the Batsuit. And the Batsuit's important because that's Batman's power, in a sense. It's not just his martial arts or just his brilliant mind. He has that to make all the tech that comes with it, and the Batsuit helps him be the hero that he is.
It serves as his weapon, his armor.
Exactly. And it's changed over the years. It's become more high tech with armor, or it's been very simple with just a suit. And I think the top 10, it shows the more popular costumes or bat suits, but it also gives a good range of the different ways that Batman's been represented. And so the Batsuit is definitely one of the things that you can talk for hours about, because in all of the comics, there's usually, if you look in the 40s and the 50s, the suit looks relatively the same, and you have core artists. But each decade shows a different type of Batman, but it's evolved so much, and there are so many different side comics and alternate universes, and then you go into other media and you see him interpreted in different ways. So the Batsuit is definitely something to discuss because it has so many different aspects to it that make up Batman and why I think people like Batman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the list is huge. There's 55
There's 55.
list. I mean, are there more than 55 Batman suits?
Yes, I'm sure there are. I would definitely say that it's more than 55. I think they just had to cap it somewhere, or those 55 were the most. And I looked at the list, and there were over 5,000 votes and over 200 voters with 55 costumes. So within those 200 people, I suppose they named those 55 came up the most. So it's interesting to see. And I personally, in this top 10, my favorite suit is not in the top 10.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to hear about that. So why don't you give us your favorite suit?
My favorite suit, and maybe it's because it was the first Batsuit Batman that I was introduced to,
The 66.
is the 66. That's my favorite suit. And I think because if you watch the television show, he has everything in that utility belt. If for any situation or any problem, for some reason, that utility belt is the answer. And so I loved that aspect
that
of
was
it.
number 33. That's like an
33.
upset.
Yeah. It was down that far, huh? But I'm glad it made the list.
Yeah.
'Cause
I don't think that suit could not make the list.
yeah. And I also like other suits, and one that's more of like an alternate one is the Batman Zur-En-Awe. And I think
Say that again?
Batman Zur-En-Awe. And
What is that?
that was, well, it originally came out, it was a one-time comic where he has like a red and purple and yellow suit, and it was originally in the 50s, but then Grant Morrison brought it back in the 2000s. And
it's red, right?
Yeah, it's like a red and it has purple and yellow, and
that's ZUR-EN-E or it's ARRH.
yeah,
Okay.
Zur-En-Awe. Yeah. So
Number 36 on ranker.com.
Okay. All mines are in the 30s. Okay.
Well, do you like Gotham by Gaslamp?
What number?
Number 30.
Ah,
That's one of our favorites.
that is
too.
one of my favorites. That is my favorite Elseworld. So
What was the
okay.
first Batman comic? Detective Comics 27, right?
Yeah. What was the original?
31.
All of mine are in the
Purple
30s.
gloves.
Okay. Yes, purple gloves.
I love this one. The Bat Caveman.
Oh.
Number 41.
Number 41. There's just so many different types, and it's funny, they say costumes, and I think they use that term correctly because not everything is necessarily a suit. For the most part it is. Most of the time he has a bodysuit, and for the earlier years there was like briefs over it, and that depended on the color, could have been black or blue, but most of the time it's a suit, and it's a whole, it just all works together. But I like the different cowls. I like the different shape of the capes. I like the different designs of the utility belts. I like what the utility belt can hold. And I think that by itself, even when people say Batsuit, that's the first thing they go to, maybe even before the cowl or even before the cape, because it had, in different books, it has so much. There's gas pellets and lasers and cameras and just batarangs and just so many, the list goes on, and sometimes kryptonite. And I want to mention that because he always doesn't have kryptonite on him, and for some reason people think he always does, and I think that's a Superman thing, but he doesn't always
A
hold
Superman inferiority
yeah,
complex?
but he doesn't always have kryptonite on him, but he has in comics before. So the list for what the utility belt can do and what it can hold goes on and on and on. And it's more, I like to look at the Batsuits for more the color scheme, because there was a time, especially in the 90s, when the Batsuit went just black on black, which I think inspired different films, which one of them we'll talk about on the list, and how the shape of the ears are, whether they're short or they're long, or how the cape is, whether it's
Right.
just there, or if he uses it to just envelop himself completely, or he uses it as a defense mechanism or protection, and all of the different things that each of the major elements that the bat suit, I think, has aids him to be Batman.
Right.
Right.
So just
but
another thing, it's like when you don't know comic books or you don't know Batman that well. I mean, everyone has an image of what Batman looks like.
right, exactly.
And then you probably say, well, do you know there's over 55 different interpretations of that? Most people would be like, I have no idea. I had no idea.
Right.
Because you do. You have an image of what Batman looks like or what you would draw if you had to draw Batman. And it's based off of something.
Exactly.
But everyone has just a little bit different interpretation.
Right. Like people who are fans of Michael Keaton's Batman, 89 and 92, I think the Batman 89, I think, was in the teens on that list, I think. So I
Well,
think I looked
the
at
Batman and Robin George Clooney was 55. The worst.
it made it.
It made it. That was probably just to get no votes.
I'm surprised it made it. I didn't think it would make it, but I think just the fact that it was so unpopular made it popular.
Right.
So, but okay, I was wondering if that was going to make the top 10, but I'm like,
Absolutely
but
not.
no.
All right,
That's
so
okay.
what do you
Okay.
want to do? You want to start with the top 10?
Yeah, we can start with the top 10.
All right.
So we can start with number 10.
Let's go with number 10.
Number
Hold on real quick,
Yes.
Adam. Shadow Adam. Do you know, have you looked at London's work to see what the numbers are? Or have you looked at the list?
I have looked at the list, but I don't have it memorized.
Okay, then I'm not going to ask you. I would just see what you thought was number 10 and see how wrong you were. All right, so number 10, what is it?
Number 10 is the Justice League Unlimited suit. So it's the suit from the animated series that was from 2004 to 2006. And I like that suit because it's a combination of the animated series that were before it. It has and I guess I liked looking at the numbers on Ranker too. I kind of noted those because there were like 74 thumbs up and like 36 thumbs down. So it I think half made it to number 10. But I always think that the animated series and television and the films, they're the first introduction to Batman for a lot of people. We've kind of discussed that in an episode talking about Batman movies and their comic book inspirations, that for a lot of people that's the first thing that you see. So a lot of the list is made up of TV and film and video games. But this design was by Bruce Timm. Like I said, it was within the early 2000s. First there was Justice League, then was Justice League Unlimited, and it has a similar style to the new Batman Adventures. It has kind of, except the cowl, I suppose. What's more noted with this, his cowl has longer ears, but he has a gray and dark blue bodysuit, and he has a utility belt that has the large pockets, which I think are interesting to note because as we go through the top 10, the utility belt, it's either a yellow or a gold, but it's either large pockets, and one of them, the utility belt, is built within the suit, and sometimes there aren't pockets, and it's little details like that kind of call back to older comics or Silver Age comics. But the suit is black, and the cape is black with like a blue outline, and he has the gloves, and what I like about this suit is I like the really kind of bright blue within the cape.
Yeah.
and then it's kind of dark everywhere else, and then it has a gray bodysuit. I like the use of blue. I know a lot of people like their suit either gray and black or all black, and they like those dark tones, but since he kind of started or originated with blue, I always like to see how the artists play with the color, because sometimes it's really bright, other times it's like a midnight blue, which we kind of see here. And then the chest emblem doesn't have the yellow oval,
Right.
it has a kind of sleek, just black bat, which is kind of calling to the new Batman Adventures, which was the late 90s.
And
So
when the cape's at rest, it seems to go over his shoulders.
yes, it goes over his shoulders, and I think in this one I really like the cowl because the ears are long, but I am a personal fan of long ears. I know people like the short swept back ears that different artists do.
Those were extremely long
Yeah, which I thought was interesting. It kind of gives it a very sleek, almost futuristic feel, and it's right after Batman Beyond, so I think that kind of played into the design of it as well. And I think a new feature for the Justice League Unlimited Batsuit was that his boots actually had heels. And I know it's little things that people may not notice, but they're important.
But you do.
But I do. But all of the elements are there: the cowl, the cape, the gray bodysuit, the black and blue cape, the boots, the gloves. And like I said, I think it's just the animated shows for a lot of people were their favorite interpretations of Batman. Or like you said, if they had to draw Batman, a lot of it would be from the animated shows.
Yeah.
So
that's
yeah,
number 10.
that is number 10.
Now,
And
are you fine with that being number 10?
I'm fine with that being number 10. I think visually that how Batman looks, it's more for this one, I think, aesthetics. He still has all of the same capabilities that he did in the animated series prior. So I think it was more just the look of it. I think people liked that look of Batman within that DCAU.
So you'd give that a thumbs up.
Yeah, so I think that's a good choice
for number 10.
number 10.
All right, that leads us to number 9.
Number 9, which I'm glad it's actually number 9 because it's a very good contrast to what we just discussed, is the Batman Year One costume.
And that's the one that was developed in comics by Frank Miller?
Right, Frank Miller, and the artist was David Mazzucchelli, and that was in 1987. And it's one of, I think, a Batman essential, that 4-issue arc that I think if anyone's trying to get into Batman comics, they don't know where to start, Year One is definitely a great book to start with, because like the title says, it's a story about Batman beginning to be Batman, and it's a retelling of his origin story, and you also get a look into him traveling the world and training his mind and his body, and then coming back to Gotham, and then discovering that he wants to take the form of the Bat and becomes Batman. And you get those early years of Bruce Wayne, which I always love those stories. And for that, they actually took out the blue.
Right.
And it is a gray bodysuit, and it's just black. Boots, cowl, cape, everything is black. So it's very simple. But I think that's important because it's his first suit. It's the first time he's coming out as Batman. So
he had a utility belt on this
right,
one.
he had a utility belt, and he had all of those elements that we went through. But yeah, he has a gray bodysuit, he has a black cowl, he has the cape and the briefs and the boots and the gloves, and the utility belt has all of the first things like gas pellets and batarangs and grappling gun and all of those first weapons and devices that he used back in 1939, 1940. So Year One just on its own is a great story arc for anyone who wants to look at the early years of Batman and Year One has just influenced so many different comics and film, especially. I always say that for like Batman Begins, Year One is definitely, they took a lot from Year One. And what's interesting to note for Batman Year One in '87 is that in his boots is the first time you see bat sonar. So he pushes a button on his heel and it triggers a call to all the live bats in his bat cave and creates a major distraction. And you actually didn't see that anywhere else. That was the first time the bat sonar was seen in comics anywhere. And so that is an important feature by itself. I think that's worthy of being in the top 10 list, introducing different gadgets or anything new to such a classic suit. So although it was simplistic in color scheme and even design, it still kept with the high tech. It still kept with what Batman's about. So Year One, and I love the animated film of Batman Year One, and that illustrates the costume beautifully. And
did they keep it the same or?
Yeah, they kept
it.
No, they kept it pretty much the same. They kept the.
So that's from the comics to the animated movie.
It is an adaptation of Miller's book. Yes, and yeah, they kept the suit the same, and they kept true to the story, which I always like when the films are close to the adaptations. Kind of the same thing with the adaptation of Dark Knight Returns. Very true to the books. It's really good.
Awesome.
But yeah, so number 9 is Batman Year One suit. It's simple, but it definitely still illustrates Batman. But you get to see a really great take on his early years and coming up with the Batsuit for the first time.
Very cool. And number 8, you actually kind of just mentioned.
Yeah, it kind of fell right into place. Number 8 is the Batman Begins costume. And that's interesting to note because
that's the Christian Bale one.
Right, that's Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan's 2005 film. And 8 years prior, we didn't have anything. And the last thing we had was Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin. So Nolan, and the designer was Lindy Hemming, and for the suit, and they really wanted to, of course, have a different take on Batman than was seen prior, but they kept true to, like I said, it's for Year One, the early years of Batman, the first Batsuit that kind of comes together. And yet they use black on black, which I think took a lot from 90s comics, especially like Troika, that series. Batman has a full black suit, black everything. You can hardly even see the chest emblem.
Right.
And I think that was kind of used as an inspiration, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, and this is my opinion, I don't like that suit. I don't think this should be in the top 10. I think the head looks misshapen.
Right.
I think it's... Oh, go on.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was one of the things I was going to talk about anyways, that the cowl, even though I like the ears, the swept back ears, and even though when designing it, they said they wanted to have the material thin enough where he can move around and
move his neck, because they couldn't, like the Keaton couldn't do that.
Right. But then they wanted the cowl itself to kind of shape Bale's face to make it really intense. I think the way that the eyes are shaped, the way the mouth is shaped, it's just by itself looking at him, it's just he looks brooding no matter what he's doing. And yet there was issues with the turning of the head and not much movement. So I think that would be the only reason why it shouldn't be so high on the list, in my opinion, is that the cowl and the movement of his head, when he's in combat, he kind of needs that aspect. And so that kind of is a drawback to me with the suit.
Yeah.
But I am a fan of the black on black, and you can see the emblem just enough right on his chest. And yes, I'm a fan of the color scheme.
But if you do the black on black, I mean, why even do the emblem on the chest?
Right. It's like you can barely see it. And for me, I like the contrast. I'm a fan of the black and then the yellow emblem
Well,
personally.
that's your 66
That's my
love.
66, of
But
course.
I mean, even the
But even
regular ones.
right, you can even have the gray suit
yeah.
with the black, and that's fine because you can see it. But the utility belt stands out, at least looking at it aesthetically. It's a gold,
Bright gold.
It's super
It
gold.
almost looks bronze.
Yeah, it's like it's a minimalistic belt, but it still holds the gas pellets and the batarangs and all of those. And even in this suit, he has like almost an undersuit that's kind of made of different materials that gives him, at least in combat, more flexibility. But I've seen other suits, or I've seen other Batmen where, at least in combat wise, they're way more flexible. I feel like this suit, it made Bale kind of stiff.
Yeah.
And that could be just opinion, but at least I've seen in just other, either it's comics or video game or the capabilities you have in video games or even in animation, that the suit, I would feel, if it's not an armored suit, and when I mean armored, I mean just the full on, there's another big hulking suit over the bodysuit. I think Batman's agility is really important in being Batman because his martial arts and him fighting is his major strength. And so the bodysuit or his costume would have to add to that, or would have to make sure that he can fight to the best of his ability. But the cape, I liked the material. It was almost like nylon, I believe, and it's long and he can cover himself, and so I liked the cape. And I wasn't a huge fan of the cowl. The ears were fine, but the movement was it was a drawback. I think that's the ultimate drawback, is the cowl.
Yeah, I think he's got it looks like he's got a huge head.
Yeah.
And it just kind of narrows down by his jaw.
Right.
So it looks like this big brained guy. I don't know.
It looks
not my favorite.
I don't know if the Batsuit should be comfortable. I think it's more.
It should be armored.
It should be armored, and it has armor, and he has an undersuit that gives that. But I think that even if it's armored, he should be able to be much more flexible than. But I don't know if that's a call to, it's his first suit, it's the early years, and then of course it's modified in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. So we see the suit change in those films, but it could be that it's his first suit, and that film, like I said, is influenced heavily by Year One, and you see for the first time in other media, the boots have the bat sonar, and so he uses that in the film, and he uses that as backup, and the bats come and tackle everybody.
Yeah.
So that's from Year One as well. But I think that suit, like I said, I think that suit's probably within the list because
it's the best Batman movie, probably.
Right, because for a lot of people, Nolan's Batman is their either favorite, or it's the first time they really got into Batman, and Batman Begins was, especially after a long period of not having a live action Batman. I mean, 8 years is a long span. So coming from the design of the Batman and Robin suit that George Clooney had to this suit, it is an improvement, but then there were some flaws, I could argue.
Yeah, well, listen to this. This is how much power I have on ranker.com. I'm on the website right now. I just gave it a thumbs down, and I moved it to number 9. So there you go. If anyone agrees with me, vote on ranker.com.
Right, and that's the thing about this list, is that you can just go and you can still vote. It's not a finalized list.
Right.
You can keep going,
right,
and the whole list can change.
Yeah, we should start a movement to get Batman and Robin George Clooney nipple suit as the number 1 Batman suit.
So anyone listening, go to the list.
Yeah, just
and just
type in best Batman costumes
right
of all
that
time,
of all
and you can
time.
vote away.
Right.
Ooh, I'm
And
glad I moved that down. All right.
so yeah, that's actually pretty cool. That and everyone listening, if you want to go and vote yourself, you can go to Ranker.com's list and put thumbs up, thumbs down on your favorite suits.
All right.
Awesome.
So I would say let's move to the real number 8, which is Batman Year One now. But we are still going to Batman number 7.
Right, which I think it's number 7 because of the anticipation.
Yeah. Because no one knows how it moves.
Because we haven't really, besides maybe 1 or 2 seconds within the trailer, we don't really know the full extent of what this Batsuit can do. But number 7 is the Batsuit for Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. Not the armored suit, but the regular Batsuit that Ben Affleck, who's going to be our new Batman, wears.
We have at least seen it in person.
Yes, we've seen it. I've seen it in person, and so I like the...
Were you raiding Ben Affleck's closet?
No, they had it at WonderCon.
Oh, they okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They had it there, and they had it at San Diego, and so I got to see it up close because I was curious about the material.
Right.
Yeah, so I got to see it in person, and then people who have done the Warner Brothers tour or have been to other cons all over, it's been traveling. But yeah, we don't get to see the suit really in action until March of next year. It comes out March 25th, 2016. But I read a recent interview and saw the designer, who's Michael Wilkinson, and he was on actually DC All Access, and he was talking about all of the suits for Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman, and of course they wanted to, him and Zack Snyder, who's the director, they wanted to create a whole new Batman because he is naturally kind of is a big guy, and Zack Snyder purposely wanted Batman to literally be bigger than Superman within height and all of that. But you can see that, and at least he stated that his strength and all of that doesn't come from the armor or the suit or his gadgets. Ben Affleck is solid, and of course that suit, I think, is the closest suit that we've seen to Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, which is a heavy influence that Snyder and Wilkinson used, not just within the film, but with the suit itself. It has that kind of flat, large bat symbol on the chest, and it's a very layered gray black suit. When you see it in person, there's not that blue isn't there. Right. So you kind of have the absence of the classic blue, and you're dealing with a lot of grays and black.
Kind of looks like snake skin on the arms and on the chest.
Yeah, it's almost like a kind of latex, seems like. But I think that's good, because even though in this one, and even in Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, we know that Batman is kind of a bigger Batman. He's not so sleek as we've seen in other films, but it seems like he can move and he'll have that agility, because the suit itself, is the bodysuit, is made to give him that.
And you're okay with the small ears?
Yeah, they're pretty short, but I think for that suit, it all kind of comes together very well. He has the gloves, and he has the boots, and he has the utility belt, and it all kind of flows together. Nothing is too extreme, and I like the influence on a comic book. I always like when the suits take from comics, and of course this is straight from Dark Knight Returns. We don't know necessarily how much of the story is going to be influenced. Of course, everyone is waiting to see the major Batman and Superman fight and see how that goes. But the suit-wise, I am a fan of the regular suit, and I'm also a fan of the armored suit as well.
This suit, though, it seems that it actually I guess the one problem I have is when you create an armor suit and you put on fake muscles. It's like the fake
Yes.
nipples, right? I go
Right.
back to that, but it's the same thing. This suit actually seems to cling to the muscles. So
Right.
what you're seeing is the defined muscles of the actual man, which
Exactly.
I like.
Right. It's form fitting, which it should be if you think about it.
And
And
I think Ben Affleck likes it because if you look at the crotch, I mean, Jesus, this thing is huge here. The outline on this thing. He's like, yeah, that's me. It's all natural. But I mean, look at these pictures. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think they did a really great job with Suit, and even with the short footage that we've seen, and I just read an article yesterday where one of the producers said that we're going to see new footage before the year is over. So we have these next 2 months, which I kind of figured the next time we would see footage is Christmas, so that actually aligns with that theory. But yeah, so I think it made number 7 because everyone is anticipating to see the suit, but I think people voted for it because it's so much like Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, which is of course is a classic. And even the Dark Knight Returns suit is on the ranker list. I'm not sure what number, but the actual just Dark Knight Returns that made it in the 55.
You know, I wonder if someone's voting on this right now because someone just voted on the Batman Begins, moved it up back to number 8. I just voted on year 1, gave it a thumbs up, moved it. I switched it. You know, so now
it's
as it stands at this moment, Batman Year 1 is 8. Batman Begins is 9.
Well, that's kind of cool that the list is active.
It's
so
fluid.
Yeah, so if people listen to this episode, hopefully all the numbers will just go crazy.
Yeah.
It'll be completely different.
I just voted Justice League Unlimited down. I gave it a thumbs down. Guess what's number 10? Batman 80s and 90s. And you don't
Nice.
I don't know if you're ready to talk about that.
I mentioned it a little bit, but
Yeah.
that's kind of that's
All
so funny. Yeah, by the time the next episode comes, this is going to be completely different
Yeah.
list, and this is not going to be accurate at all.
All right. So let's go to by the way, I'm giving number 7, Batman versus Superman, a thumbs up.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
I like that.
I like it. Even though we haven't seen a lot of it, I still am very optimistic, and I like the suit. I don't really have a problem with it, and I would love to see more of it in action. So I'm excited to see that.
All right, give us number 6.
Number 6 is a fan favorite, I know, because people talk about it all the time on the blog and on Instagram, and that is the Batman Beyond costume. And it is on this list, to me, the most high-tech you can get with Batman because it's futuristic. The show originally came out in 1999. It lasted to 2001. It's an animated series. It's set within the DCAU of Batman the Animated Series, The New Batman Adventures, and it's set into the future, and Bruce Wayne is retired, and this suit is said to be the last suit that he wore, and it was highly just teched out to pretty much keep him from not falling apart at some point. But the technology was so advanced, they claim, that given he passed it down to the next Batman, or the futuristic Batman, Terry McGinnis. And so Batman trains him, and he is the Batman of the future. And this suit is different in a lot of ways, and it's more the color scheme I love because it's not just a full black bodysuit but it has a bright red bat emblem on the chest. So of course, just looking at it, it's striking because the red on the black is awesome, I think. And there's like I said, there's a lot of different tech involved. It doesn't have a cape necessarily, but it has almost wing-like where he can glide, and it has flight capabilities. So that's already there. And he has a utility belt built within the suit. So it's not it's not detachable. You can't just take it off. It's within the suit, but it still holds all types of batarangs. He has electric batarangs and explosive batarangs, and he has still grappling gun and all the different regular weapons that you would see in a utility belt, the gas pellets and everything. But the suit itself is almost made out of electronic circuits in a way, and yet he can still fold it up and put it in his backpack when he has to go somewhere. And because of the way that it's made, the flexibility and the way that he can move it, of course, is extraordinary. I think this and actually the next number on our list, or the next suit on our list, those two I think are the most flexible that I think Batman is within these suits. I think that it's not, and he doesn't have a cowl, which is something that's to note. It's like just a face mask in a way.
Explain this face to me. I mean, I don't get it. How does it work? Because you see his teeth, you see his eye, but his whole face is covered in black.
But his whole face is covered in black. It's almost like
it's like the symbiote from Venom.
Yeah, and
it covers his lips.
It covers pretty much everything, and yet inside of the suit, it works. He has like a microphone and like his fingers, and he can communicate with Bruce through even the suit, and there's so much tech involved because of course they have to present that this is the future, but it's a great suit to compare even just year one to, because it's the first time Bruce Wayne goes out, and then you have this suit, and I think this would be the type of suit that Batman would have in the future. And it doesn't have a cowl, it doesn't have a cape, it still has the boots, and on the boots, this is new, it has like rockets, so he can kind of fly in that way. And so you kind of have these little elements that make it very futuristic. It's very sleek because it all comes together. Nothing looks detached. It's all one thing. And what's great is that the suit itself, whomever is wearing it, it fits perfectly to them. So technically Bruce, when he was wearing it, he didn't have to alter it to give it to Terry. It just automatically fit him. So that's just tech by itself.
Seems like a suit that could only be made in comics and or animation.
Yes, there's so much it can do and the capabilities it can do. That I think that's why a lot of people want to see Batman Beyond in live action, to see if they can actually do it, because and of course nowadays movies can do almost anything now, but I think that's a big reason why people want to see it in live action, because it's so, like I said, and I'm sure I'm using the term too much, but futuristic is the word to use, and it has all of these different capabilities and represents Batman in the future.
Have you seen a good Batman cosplay? Batman Beyond cosplay?
Yeah, I have actually. People do cosplay at cons, and most of the time it's just a full black suit. So I think it's all connected. I think even in the comics where it's like the cowl separate, and then you have the suit, and then you have the cape, and then you have the utility belt, and then you have the boots. It's almost like his suit is all one. It's all connected. Right. But I think it's because it's all within this network of technology that makes it amazing, and he can go toe to toe with these futuristic bad guys, or within the world that Gotham is 40 years later. Right. So I think that the Batman Beyond suit definitely, I figured it would be in the top 10 even before I saw the list. So I'm not surprised that it's number 6.
I gave it a thumbs down.
Yeah.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's a top 10.
It's top 10. I know people like it a lot.
Wow.
More because they loved that series. And like I said, animated series, very influential, all of them, not just the first one in the early 90s, but the animated series influenced a lot of people, and even the later series. Like I think the Batman's on there somewhere.
The animated
And
series, huh?
yeah, and that's actually, if we're just going on to number 5.
Oh, how did that work?
It is Batman the animated series costume, and it's the one from 92 to 95 and then 95 to 97. It's the first design by Bruce Timm. And I think, like I said, for a lot of people, the first time being introduced to Batman is through the animated series. So it's dubbed a classic look. It has a lot of the elements from, even at least color wise, it has a lot of the elements from the Silver Age Batman. It has a kind of really light gray, and it has a lot of bright blue accents, which I found that was really important because doing the art for the show, it's known that they did work on they drew it on black paper and used light pens and art to do that. So you're already working against the black. So you have to kind of have those bright colors. You have to have those bright hues. So the bodysuit itself was gray, and then it was outlined with bright blue accents depending on how he moved. But inside the cape was just this bright blue, almost sky blue, but then outside of the cape was black. So when you see him moving through the shadows, he can almost be one figure all in black, and then have 3 slight lines outlining his shape, and you can still feel the intensity of that dark night, but then you have these colors that highlight it. And of course, what's most memorable is that in beginning in the animated series, it had the bat emblem was the classic yellow oval symbol that was introduced in the early 60s in the comics. And he still has the gloves, and they have fins, like the scalpeled fins, and then he has the utility belt, which is kind of has those cloth like pockets that I always like. I am a huge fan of the utility belt that has those pockets, because I like the Batman 66, which he has those huge pockets. And the belt itself is bright yellow, so you have these really light colors that contrast with just the dark nature of the art of the show, because it's casted on black paper. So you needed those colors. So I think the aesthetics in this is really important, and it calls to the classic look that you saw in the 60s and the 70s. And just like with Batman Beyond, the flexibility of Batman, the way he fights in the show, is extreme. The hand-to-hand combat is perfect within the suit, and it doesn't seem binding. It all flows together. And the cowl, he has the same cowl, and it has black with blue outline, and it's just the look itself is the classic. It has the classic Batman colors. It calls to the 60s and the 70s, and it's the animated series, and like I said,
That's your favorite.
Right, it's my favorite, but
it really
for a lot of
does.
people, it has that nostalgic look, and it uses those colors. Even though people like a dark Batman, blue and yellow for a lot of the designs in comics and in other media, those are the colors that Batman has somewhere in his costume.
Right. I haven't done any scientific research, but I say that if you asked 100 people to draw their version of Batman, or what they thought the main version of Batman was, I think it would really look a lot like this animated series.
It would look like the animated series. It would look like, I think, one of there were 3 different costumes within the 90s animated series. It would look like one of those, but I think this one, the early one from 92 to 95, that one, I mean, that's the one I would attempt to draw. It would look horrible, but but that's what I would
No one
envision.
said you were an artist.
No, and that's why I love artists, because they do amazing things that I can't. So I definitely shout out all the artists that can draw this Batman or any Batman.
So knowing what you know about the top 4, would
Yes.
you have put the animated series costume higher than 5?
Yes.
Where would you put it? Would you put it at number 1?
I might put it at number 2.
It's definitely your top 2.
Yes, it is definitely my top 2.
Okay, that's
And
all. That's
so,
all I'm asking
yeah,
about.
I would definitely have put it higher, knowing the top 4. And so I actually don't know when this list began,
Right.
or when they put it up initially. I'm not really sure, but that's why I was curious, because the number 4 suit is from the video game Batman Arkham Origins. And from my experience with posting and talking with other Batman fans, a lot of people don't really like Arkham Origins.
Really?
So I was kind of, it was interesting to me that it was number 4. So, but a lot of people liked this suit. And if you don't know, it's the 3rd installment of the Batman Arkham video game series, which is critically acclaimed. And the first one was Arkham Asylum, then we have Arkham City, and then Arkham Origins is set 5 years before Arkham Asylum happens, so it's a prequel. And it shows it's like the first look at Batman, and he has to go up against Black Mask, and he has a bounty on his head, and he sends out, so Batman has to fight on Christmas Eve. He has to fight these assassins that are trying to get him, and of course he tangles with Joker, which is always fun. And yeah, so it's I like the Batman Arkham series. I like the video games, all of them. They're great. And the Batsuit design was by Eric Holmes. And what I like about this, and there's actually another Arkham suit that's on our list, so we'll get to that later. But I like the fact that in designing the suit, they wanted to have it seem like it is the early years of Batman, that he's kind of piecing it together, that he's creating his own tech within the Batcave, and then he has the help of the Wayne Enterprise facilities to give him the technology, and all of it is kind of pieced together. His cowl is pieced together. Everything's kind of separate, or where he gets it from. And it has all of that fun, all the fun gadgets that you get to use in the game, of course. But it has a gray and black bodysuit. There isn't any blue necessarily. So they're kind of going with that kind of dark color scheme. And just like within the comics, as it's said a lot, especially within modern comics, says that the Batsuit is usually made out of Kevlar. So they put that into the game. And I know for the design of just the Arkham series in general, even though a different studio did this game, they want to mix they want it to be kind of realistic in the visuals for a video game, but still stay true to the comics. So you see the suit, and it looks just like you would see it from any of the modern comics, and it has the same abilities. It has a lot of flexibility, and it's with a lot of bodysuits. It's bulletproof, it's waterproof, it's fireproof, and it even has kind of an armor-like feel to it. And the cowl is kind of like a protective helmet. And what's most important, and my favorite thing in the game, is that it has detective mode, which you can turn on, and he can analyze enemies, and he can listen
through the tech in the costume.
Yeah, through the cowl. So he can kind of have like almost like X-ray. He can look through walls, and he can
stealing Superman's powers.
So it's like a super high-tech space science fiction type of ability.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a crazy sex. That's the worst bunch of adjectives I've ever used in my life. But sorry.
But no, that's exactly it. And he can, and of course, it's detective mode, so he can analyze objects that are in front of him.
Iron Man. That's what it's like.
yes, detective mode is like Batman being Iron Man a little bit, but it's one of the best things in the game. And
So it's more for gameplay.
it is more for gameplay,
Because you don't
but
see that in the comic books.
no, he can't flick that on and at least see the status of his enemies or look through walls or things like that. But it does have he can communicate with Alfred, or he can communicate in the Batcave, which you see a lot in comics through the cowl, like through the ears, and so that's incorporated into it. And the cape is it's fire waterproof, and it has wing tips, and it has a great shape, so he can hide, or you can cut corners and you can like crouch and jump, and it's a so the suit
So-
itself is a great Batman suit, I think. And
Is it worthy of number 4?
I wouldn't have put it at number 4, but it is a great suit.
Is it a
It's-
top 10?
Maybe. It might
Okay.
be a top 10. But I agree with the other video game suit that we'll talk about, that it should be within the top 10. But I would still give this suit a thumbs up, because it's because it still has all of the elements. It has the cape, the cowl, it has the gloves, which are like combat black gloves. They're not really the just up to the wrist gloves. It goes with the suit. So it's a really good Batman suit. It's really good for combat. It's really good for being both the martial artist, the detective.
It's great for a video game.
Yeah, and it's great for a video game. It fits well with the video game mode, which is
So give me number 3. I'm ready for number 3.
number 3. It's the New 52 costume, which
Interesting.
right. And there are actually a few different Batman costumes within the New 52, because if you look at
This
it,
is the first New 52 Batman costume.
right. So the first New 52 Batman costume, I guess you would be looking at arcs like Court of Owls, or you could look at Justice League and see Jim Lee's design. So you kind of get to look at different elements of it, but
Short ears.
right, but it has the same type. It's short ears, and they have the gray and the black, and but he still has the gloves,
Seems
which
to be
are-
blue, more blue.
there's there's a little bit of blue.
Yeah, I'm talking the cowl and the cape.
Yeah. And so they keep true to kind of the classic colors, but make it, I think, in a more modern sense, because New 52 and it is the new Batman. But there are several different ones you can talk about. But I do think that the New 52, if you had to pick a suit, at least up until recently, Jim Lee's design was the suit, because he designed all of the Justice League and all the characters, and it was kind of that staple for at least the first 3 years of New 52.
And one interesting design quality that he used was to almost panel the different parts of the costume that normally you wouldn't see paneled, like the thighs,
Right.
or the hamstrings, or the biceps. It seems to be pieced together.
Yes.
Even the chest and the stomach.
Right. Which I think for a bat suit, considering
Well, sense.
it makes sense, because I always see that the bodysuit, or whatever the suit he wears, should be that form fitting, should be that definitive. It should show those qualities, because Batman, as we know, he's at the peak of physical perfection. So that should be emphasized in the art as well. I think you don't get to see things like that with suits like in the Batman Beyond. It's solid black. There's no definition. It's just very sleek. But of course, that's for the futuristic way. But yes, Jim Lee's design for New 52 definitely shows those distinctions in the suit itself. And then you have Greg Capullo's Batman, which is and then you can even look at the Batman now, and there are a lot of different suits that have been shown through New 52, and I think that a lot of people for New 52 at first weren't really. I don't think they liked the change, but I think more because of the origins and the background and the storyline. But design wise, I think people were okay with the way that.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah.
I gave it a thumbs up.
Yeah, so I think New 52 has a right to be in the top 10. And you can look at different people who draw Batman within the New 52. I mean, now there are several books, but if we had to pick the designer for New 52, it would be Jim Lee.
And
So
do you think that's a worthy of top 3?
I think for a modern comic, New 52 could be in top 3, but because of the number 2 and the number 1, I would probably change my answer. But
Well, what would you rank it? What would you rank the New 52?
The New 52, I think it
Or at
should
least give
be
me a range.
I think it would be. I think it would be in top 10, but it might be like 10.
Okay.
Because I think there are a lot of different. There are so many suits. If I
Oh,
had to really,
we know that.
yeah. So if I had to really put it, but I do think it's worthy of top 10. So I'm not mad at them having it as number 3.
Oh, them. That's the fans.
Yeah.
Ranker didn't do that.
Yeah,
Ranker
Ranker
just
didn't
put
do
it up
that.
there.
It's all the people who are still liking right now.
Right. It hasn't changed since I've been
It hasn't
doing this.
changed. Okay.
All right. Number 2.
Okay, number 2 is the Arkham Asylum costume, which is the video game.
So that is different from the Arkham Origins at number 4?
It slightly, yes, it is, and I think the biggest difference is the way that the suit came together. Like I said, I think that's why it was important for the Arkham Origins, where the designer wanted to show that it's his first suit and he's putting it together and he's creating it himself. But of course, Arkham Asylum, he's been Batman for a while, and it's the first game within the Batman Arkham series. It came out in 2009, written by Paul Dini and same designers, and the bodysuit is still the same. It's gray and black, and it's a very simple suit, and yet you still have all of the same gadgets, the technology. You still have the utility belt that shoots out. You can have batarangs and gas pellets, and the cowl still has detective mode, which is the first time you get to use detective mode. So by the time you play Arkham Origins, you're used to that feature, but the cowl was distinctive because of detective mode at the time when it was released. And the cape is still long, and it gives you, of course, gliding ability, so it's big enough where he can jump from building to building or jump down and attack enemies. And glide kick to the face, which is awesome. And the cape can help when he crouches and when he has to do like silent takedown and things like that, and all of the things you can do in the video game. But the suit itself, it has kind of more of a realism to it, even though it's a video game, and it calls a lot to the comics, calls a lot to the modern comics, and it's almost influenced a little bit by Jim Lee's Batman seen a few years prior, just in the stealth of it and the way it's designed.
It seems like it's very functional.
Yeah, it is.
The boots they have proper tread.
Right.
And the gloves seem to have a bit of an armor element to it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The body seems like a skin-tight leotard.
Yeah, it's skin-tight, but it's flexible, yet it's protective. It has all of those elements. It's waterproof. It's fireproof. He still has all of his gadgets, and he can still... and the fighting capabilities are great. And even though it's a video game, it still looks very realistic to what maybe a modern Batman suit would look like, or what Batman would wear today. So, and of course, for Arkham Asylum, for a lot of people, for some people, for these video games, that was their favorite Batman, and Arkham Asylum is highly acclaimed. So
there you go.
So yeah, but I think I would
video games in the top 4.
Right. Which I found interesting. I was kind of hoping there would be more comics, but it's okay.
I think, I wonder who's actually voting. If this is a video game driven voting base
Right.
here.
Yeah, like the community, maybe they're more into video games, which is totally possible. But yeah, there's a lot of video games, a lot of animated series, and only one film, really. So,
One
um,
film.
I think. Well,
Yeah.
Batman Begins, right?
Right.
So it's very outside of the comic book media, even though, of course, comics influenced
Everything.
all of these in some way or another.
All right. So, are we ready?
Yeah,
We ready for number one?
yeah,
I think they got it right.
yeah. I see why. I totally get it.
I think that even if you listen to the past podcasts, you talk about this costume
Yes.
and this particular pose in that costume.
Right.
That is now the Google search, Batman, boom, comes up.
Right.
It's become the most iconic Batman pose in the most recent past.
Right.
Which one is it?
It's Jim Lee's Batman, particularly Batman Hush. But I think they label it as Jim Lee's Batman, which is why for number 3, that's why I don't know where I would place it, because for New 52, I would say the designer's Jim Lee, so he's kind of in there twice. But I do understand why this Batman would be fan favorite, and because when Hush came out, and it came out in 2003, Batman's design when Jim Lee came out with this with Jeff Loeb's Hush, the design changed completely. Even the book itself, the logo on the book, Chip Kidd came in. It was the whole redesign of Batman. It kind of jump started the 2000s in a way for the Batman era. And Jim Lee's art, he has such a distinct style. And like you said, he incorporates the grays and the blues, and yet it still feels modern. It doesn't feel like the 66, it doesn't feel like the Silver Age, and there's every line and every distinction of Batman is seen within the cowl and the cape and the utility belt and his body and his bodysuit and the boots. And
it actually makes you wonder whether the vote is for the Jim Lee interpretation or the Jim Lee art versus the costume itself.
Yeah.
Because clearly that picture is unbelievable.
Right. It's the variant to 608 where he's standing on, looking out at Gotham, and his cape is almost around him. Everyone knows that. I'm sure most people have that poster. It's now one of the most iconic Batman images ever. That's definitely, if you had to pick what cover is iconic, that's in top 10 somewhere. Even I don't know, unless, would it be number 1 in images?
Right, I don't know.
We go to stores, it's on backpacks, it's on t-shirts,
it's everywhere.
It's on wallets.
Right, so is this actually the fans voting for the art versus the costume?
The actual costume, because I really think it's the art. Because the costume itself, and its function within the story and everything is fine, and it holds to par how Batman was even in the other stories before this Batman, because this Hush ran through the regular Batman publication. It ran from 608 to 619, so it's not like he invented other new gadgets or anything. He still used his same everything, but it's just the look of it was so, at the time, and the story itself, of course, is now an almost it's a classic story. It's a great story for people who want to jump into Batman comics. I definitely would recommend. But I think it's just the look of it itself. I think it's the art more than the function of the costume
or anything else.
Yeah, I think it's just the way that it looks, the incorporation of the colors, and just the way that the whole suit comes together. And of course, Jim Lee is a brilliant artist, so he draws Batman fantastic. He's definitely someone who was meant to draw Batman. So it's always exciting to see him draw the Dark Knight. And he's even doing a Batman series now, the Batman Europa, and so he's working on Batman, and it looks incredible, and it's very similar. I mean, this is his style.
Right.
But yeah, I totally understand why Jim Lee's Batman would be number one, or why fans would vote it as number one. So I can't really disagree.
Okay. Well, so for your personal top two, you said Batman the Animated Series was in there.
Right. I would put it, yeah, I
So-
would put it there, because I would still say that
So what's number one, or what's number one or two? What are we putting in our top two here?
Let's see. I would put Jim Lee still in the top at least 3. He might be number 3. I'm trying to wrestle around with what would be a really good number 1, because I don't want to say just yet if I think that suit would be number 1. But I think for at least the modern Batman fan, maybe ones that came in right when Hush came out, that image of Batman, that's what pops up in a lot of people's heads. If you're not thinking about anything animated or anything from TV or anything from film or video games, I think if you're like, okay, think of Batman in comics, that cover, Jim Lee's cover with Scott Williams and Alex Sinclair, I always think that they're a modern trinity of Batman creators. Anytime they come together and work on any project, it's stunning work. So I always like the work of when Jim Lee, Scott Williams, and Alex Sinclair come together. It's awesome. So
So did you give me an answer?
no. I didn't. I'm stalling.
I know that Batman 66 is your favorite.
It is my favorite.
What is the number one objective Batman costume?
I would say I'm just going to do it. Animated series is number 1 because I think it is just that classic
All right, you said
colors.
It.
Yeah.
You said it.
So
What's
it's
number
there.
2?
Number 2. I would go.
Come on.
I would like to say
It's like saying which one of your children is your favorite. It sounds like that's how you're hemming and hawing here.
Well, I would like to brainstorm it, but the original, the Golden Age Batman suit,
Okay.
I think with the purple gloves, I think
you
that
go.
should be there.
You go.
I do, and because it's not just the first one, but that's what Batman was made to look like, and everything else afterwards is.
And you loved the homage to that in 0 Year.
Yes, I do. I think that is awesome, which is why for the New 52, I really like that in that suit, because it's not even a suit. It's kind of like it's different, and I like the fact that they use the color palette of the purple gloves, and Greg Capullo's palette is awesome. Even right now, he's using a lot of bright purples and yellows for this current arc, which I'm loving. I think it's awesome.
Well, there you have it.
But that's mine. So I know that people listening, maybe their favorite didn't make the top 10.
But
that's
why you go to ranker.com, you vote on these lists, you have some fun with it. And if there is other lists on ranker.com that you'd like to hear Londyn and I and Shadow Adam discuss and get Londyn's true opinion on what is the number one.
It's like pulling teeth.
Yeah. Well, but it's true. She loves everything Batman, so it's very hard.
It is hard. You have no idea.
It's like she doesn't want to offend the other costumes.
I don't.
For sake, they might come alive at night and beat her up or something.
Because there's so many, but they're all in their own way amazing.
Right.
So,
well, that is the fun of ranker.com.
Yeah.
Because you can
awesome.
actually have an opinion and check what you like. You can add your comments, and it's a very cool site. And I think if you have a moment to spare and you want to get lost on lists,
That's
man,
the place to
that's
go.
the place to go. So thank you to our friends at Ranker.com
Yes,
for
thank
teaming up with
you.
us on this. And
Because I have been wanting to tackle the Batsuit somehow, and I'm like, there's so many, I don't know. So this helped a lot to
All
kind
right.
of cover some ground on the Batsuit and just in general, especially for people who like that aspect of Batman, the Batsuit, and who think that that's the best superhero costume. Because of course, Superman, the way he looks is iconic, but for Batman, the Batsuit is just as important as any other aspect of his mythos. So
there you go.
So yeah, it's awesome.
All right. So thank you all for tuning in. This has been the history of the Batman with London, recorded here live at Meltdown Comics and Collectibles in Hollywood, California. I guess we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening. This show has been engineered and produced by Mason Booker. I am Adam Silverstein, aka Wednesday's Finest. Be on the lookout for On Some Hip Hop Ish, my other podcast coming out soon with Brandon Schultz of the Blockheads fame. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening. In London,
Peace, love, and Batman.